The city of Boston is taking an historic step, establishing a new task force on reparations to determine how the city can acknowledge its role and wrongdoing in the slave trade and to repair the inequities that exist today for descendants of slavery and all Black and brown Bostonians. State leaders abolished slavery in 1783, but the region continued to benefit from the labor of enslaved people.
That legacy formed deep, painful, and lasting systems of exclusion and inequity that persist to this day. Inequities are evident through the disparities that we see in wealth and income, home ownership and education, access, neighborhoods and health outcomes, and even in the quality of air that we breathe.
And joining me now is the chairman of that new 10-member task force, Attorney Joseph Feaster Jr., and City Councilor at Large, Julia Mejia, one of the leaders of the effort to create a reparations commission. Mayor Wu laid out the two-part function of the commission. The first is to document Boston's role in the slave trade and its continuing impact on our communities. And second, to assess what actions the city has taken and can take in the future. Councilor Mejia, let's begin with your efforts to create the task force. What were some of the barriers and explain the disagreement over inclusion?
Yeah, so I would first have to just, start off by one of the biggest accomplishments was really to get people on the same page in terms of what this moment was all about. And I just want to acknowledge that it was under the leadership of Tanisha Sullivan, who is the current president of the NAACP, that brought it to our attention a few years ago. And
what were some of the concerns, though, when it was first brought up, and how did you reach consensus?
Yeah, so we're still in that process, right, of reaching consensus. It was really about stepping to the side and as a legislator really creating space for community to define for themselves what this moment was all about. So we started off with a hearing, and based on that hearing we were able to identify that the city of Boston was interested in moving towards creating a formal structure to really study reparations. And as a result of that worked with Dr. Kamara and Yvette Modestine to draft up the ordinance, which is now the commission, the task force.
It's an historic step for sure. The results of a Pew study on reparations released in November found that of those who support it, they believe reparations should be delivered in several ways, including the form of educational scholarships and cash payments. Joe, how do you believe the commission can ultimately help Black Bostonians? And I know you're just starting out in this role.
Well, first and foremost, Karen, thank you for having me here this morning. And I certainly want to say thank you to Councilor Mejia and Boston City Council and Mayor Wu for putting together the reparations task force. You're absolutely correct. We have yet to meet. The announcement was just a few days ago. We have yet to meet, but certainly have been thinking about this, have studied the ordinance, have looked at what's been transpiring nationally. In fact, there's a global reparations commission. So we will be informed, and as the councilor stated, and as the phases of our inquiry, we'll first want to gather the information. So we'll start with a process of engaging through an RFP process, someone to help us with the history. And then secondly, then we'll talk about, and I think there are 4 questions that need to be answered, not all of them by us. The question is, what is the debt? Who is entitled to any reparations, or who are the debtors? Thirdly, who will pay, and whatever the form of the pay will be in, and the last will be, when will it be paid?
And now, you talked about that at the announcement.
Yes.
That's the question, though, that a lot of people are going to have, is where will the money to right the wrongs come from?
Well, that's to be determined. I mean, I think that there's an organization called the National African American Reparation Commission, and they have a 10-point plan. And I was reading that in advance of today, just so I can come here somewhat knowledgeable.
Yes.
And they have 10 points. We don't know what form reparations will take. That's part of what we'll do through our research, and with the other 9 great minds who are serving with me on the commission. There are 10 members on the commission. And in concert with the community, we'll be having listening sessions. We'll be conferring with Councilor Mejia and her colleagues. So we will be both very transparent, We will definitely be inclusive, and what I call the 21st century word, we intend to be intentional.
Okay, now, Councilor Mejia, you're well aware that several other communities are heading down this same path. Evanston, Illinois became the first U.S. city to create a reparations plan for its black residents. California, the first state to establish a reparations task force, and they're close to their deadline for recommendations. Even closer to home, Providence, Rhode Island officials have approved $10 million for a city reparations program, and that city is using federal COVID response funds and making investments in small businesses and programs. So while you've just begun the task force, have you looked at what others have accomplished?
Yeah, we have. And I think I wanted to just piggyback on some of the points that Joe made in regards to, and to answer. I think this is an opportunity for us to look at our in educational institutions, our hospitals, in terms of who is going to support the financial payouts, if you will. It's going to have to, the city's going to have to look at all different pots of dollars. And when you think about reparations, it's not just about financial, it's also about repairing the harm. There's also social and emotional impact that we need to look at. Things, forms of apology, looking at symbols that have been traumatic to our community. So I think when we think about repairing the harm, there's so many different approaches that we can take, but I definitely do know that we have to look at policies like redlining, the lack of educational investments, how difficult we've made it for black residents to be able to build economic wealth. All of those things have to be looked at, and once those things have been unpacked is how are we going to repair the harm. And some of that work is going to be done through the legislative process, some of it is going to be done through the financial process, but I think that every city is going to be unique in terms of what the moment is calling for.
And Joe, what do you see when you see some of the efforts, when you are researching some of the efforts happening around the country?
Well, it's evident just by what the councilor said that she is right, spot on with regards to how we would have to approach this particular issue. And that's why I made the comment that determining what reparations will be is still something to be decided. And I would encourage anyone to take a look at the National African American Reparation Commission. They have 10 points, and I think that that will be illustrative for us as we go forward. Yes, we will be looking at Evanston, Illinois, what's going on in terms of the legislation for the task force in California. Atlanta has just funded its reparation task force, and as you mentioned, Providence. All of that is going to be in fair play to inform us as to how we proceed. And yes, it's not going to be an easy process. You know, there are those who are going to want to say, give me my money. That may not necessarily be what happens, but I think that at the end of the day, it is my task as a chairman is to be like the orchestra conductor to make sure that we follow what the ordinance says. There are 3 phases to what the city council has put forward. We intend to follow that. We have until December of 2024. There are some time frames, et cetera, that are in play, and we will follow that.
Let me ask you this question. Private educational institutions like Harvard, Brown, Yale have acknowledged a good portion of their wealth was seeded by the slave trade, and some major banks as well. Are there any lessons that we can learn from their process? Very quickly, as we close out the segment.
The answer is yes, and that I'm sure that we will be informed specifically about that. That gets to the question of who pays. Right. And so therefore we will be informed when we engage that person who will give us all of that history once we issue the RFP.
Yeah, okay. and I just want to just add that Boston, unlike other cities, we are extremely known for our racial tension. So this is where I believe Boston has a real opportunity to really lean into that tension that exists.
Okay, and I just want to make note that Boston's Reparation Task Force announcement came just a day after a doctoral research student unveiled evidence of 19th century Roxbury Church parishioners having enslaved dozens of Africans and indigenous people in the years prior to 1783. Thank you both for...
And Senator Owens.
And Senator Owens.
We would not be here
without that.
Without his leadership.
Okay. Thank you both for being here to give us a preview of what's to come.